Okay, a good afternoon, shalom to you. Let's have a little bit of a conversation. Thank you for clicking on this video and watching. There's something I wanted to talk about for quite some time, but I did not have an opportunity to do so. So let's talk a little bit about Jewish identity and the political minefield that we have to navigate as specifically Hebrews and Israelites, African Israelites coming back to Judaism. Now, if you go to an AI, any kind of AI, and you ask the AI to produce an image of a Jew, any kind of image, I'm going to use some of the images that I use as thumbnails for my various projects and videos and teachings. Like this one here, I use this one for my videos when I teach the book, the Atutevonot in Spanish. I just want to... No, I don't want to go there yet. Just want to open an image. Anyways, the reason why I want you to see this is because if you go to any AI and you ask the AI to produce a video of a Jew, it's going to show you the popular image of Jews, and that is East European Jews and West European Jews and American Jews. And I don't want to be political or racial, but it will show you pictures of white Jews. Very seldom you will find a picture of a black Jew unless he was a convert in the Western world to Judaism. It's only been in recent years, for example, with the admittance of the Lemba community being part of Israel, or being Jews, specifically called Jews, that you started seeing black indigenous Jews. But it's not the image that's sold. You hardly see North African Jews sometimes. You'll hardly see Mizrahi Jews from the East or anywhere else. And that's not accusational from my part to make this statement, but I'm not interested in the demographic. I'm interested in the identity. What do people mean when they say that they are Jewish? So let me see here. So what do people mean when they say they are Jewish? We have to define these things so that we understand them. And I'm not going to go into too much history. This is not a history lesson, and I don't want to go into a history lesson because that will just take longer than what I intend on taking to make this point. So instead of going deep into history, I just want to share a window. My computer tells me I cannot share, but why? I need to share. Let's try again. So I go to a window and I want to share this. Perfect. So what does it mean to be a Jew? You're going to get a lot of answers if you ask people what does it mean to be a Jew. But let's go back to basics. Let's go back to basics so that we can understand our identity as we are coming back to Judaism. But not only as people who are coming back, but to accommodate people who are coming back. For example, I'm down here in Argentina and I'm doing my own business of study here, trying to get ready for medical school, but also I find myself teaching Torah to Bnei Israel. people that are Israelites or have Israelite heritage, and they're making teshuvah and coming back to Judaism. And like myself, they're doing exactly the same thing, and they're headed towards conversion, or what's called conversion. But it's more like a tevilah of teshuvah for some of us, because I don't know. They say you never lose your Jewish status, but apparently you do, because if you don't have papers to prove your Jewishness, then you're as good as the people of the world. So I guess maybe it is a conversion. But one's experience with God, which I'm going to highlight later, says differently. So anyways, I'm ending up teaching people as well. I'm not coming back alone to Judaism, but coming back with a number of people. So I just want us to go back to the biblical map. When we go back to the biblical map, this is the division of the land among the tribes of Judah. So when our forefathers came from this section, they encamped here. This is where we received the Torah. And there's a back and forth of traveling and turning back. But eventually, we were on this side of the Jordan. And from this side of the Jordan, we would cross over into what's called the Holy Land. Well, that's the wrong way of putting it. I hate that word, the Holy Land. It's not the Holy Land. They say it's a Holy Land as a political statement. It's Eretz Israel. It's a land of Israel. What Holy Land? So anyways, they would eventually cross from here. And these tribes, Gad and Reuven, they decided to stay on this side of the Sea of Galilee, because they said to Moses, on this side of, and Manasseh as well, or Manasseh, they said on this side there's enough space to feed their animals, especially grazing land for their cattle. So they choose to stay on this side of the Jordan. They didn't cross over. And the condition that Moses, our great teacher, gave them was that if they're going to stay on this side of the fence or the border with the river here, the Jordan River, they must cross over with numbers of men to make war against the enemies of Israel. So they would cross over to meet with their brothers to do battle, for example, against the Philistines in this area, for example, historically being problematic, or sometimes in these areas. So whenever Israel was going to make war, these three tribes had to cross over and meet their brothers in number to form the Israelite army. But as you can see, the territory of Benjamin, where Jerusalem is a territory of Benjamin, and south of it, the desert, we have Judah, and within Judah is Shimon, in the middle here. So in the book of Isaiah, chapter 7, starting from chapter 2, here we have a king named Ahaz, or Ahaz in English. Ahaz is afraid of the union between the northern kingdom and Assyria. So all of this, except for Benjamin, all of this is the kingdom of Israel in the north. These are 10 tribes, 10 or 10 and a half. At the bottom here is the kingdom of Judah. This is Judah. So let's give it a different color. So this is the kingdom of Judah down here, including Benjamin. Judah and Benjamin amalgamated and made one tribe. So in chapter 2, chapter 7, chapter 9, chapter 12, we have King Ahaz was afraid that the northern tribes, our forefathers, my forefathers, specifically the tribe of Dan being my forefathers, they, and also partly Naphtali, they went into an alliance, an unholy alliance with Damascus, Assyria. They went into a holy alliance with Assyria against Judah in the south. They were talking about it. Then the prophet Isaiah says, before they even go to battle, they'll be like straw that is burnt and licked by fire and consumed. So the threat made King Ahaz to lose his faith. This is Isaiah chapter 7. And King Ahaz loses his faith and needs a physical sign to know that God has not left him, that God is still with him. And then what happens? What happens is God reassures King Ahaz and the Jewish people that they will not be overtaken by the northern kingdom, the 10.5 tribes, neither will they be overtaken by the king of Damascus. So this whole alliance, unholy alliance, was led by Damascus against Judah in the south. So who are the Jews? The word Jew you will never find elsewhere in the Bible. Actually, the one that with the name Jew in English, you'll never find it, but you'll find the word Yehudi. And the word Yehudi you will find in the book of Esther. And the book of Esther is the only place where this word Jew comes out or comes up. So who is a Jew? What is a Jew? Today you'll get a different definition for sure, but a Jew assumes that one, you come from the house of Judah, according to the biblical evidence. You come from the house of Judah plus the house of Benjamin. This is the biblical understanding of who's a Jew. And this comes out in Esther. But in Esther, it wasn't only the Jews that were in the kingdom of Persia during her time, but also a remnant of the northern kingdom. So to be a Jew is to be traditionally from Judah, Benjamin, plus the remnant of the 10 tribes. What do I mean, the remnant of the 10 tribes? Those of the 10 tribes who came from the northern kingdom and started to join the people in the south. At no time in Jewish history, even through the divisions, were northern people against joining Judah, even though it was a minority. Not everyone in the northern kingdom went into apostasy and idolatry, but the whole kingdom was prophesied to be going into exile because of the sins of idolatry, because of hatred between Jews and Israelites, between the people of Israel, and because of Lashon Hara, which is an evil tongue. When the spies went to spy out the land, they said, we cannot take the land because they are giants, they are sons of Anak. That earned the Jewish people the exile that they were about to go through right here. So during this time, the definition of the Jew, and during Esther's time, the definition of a Jew was Judah primarily plus Benjamin. These are the Jews plus the remnant of the tribes of Israel. So when we talk about Judaism, we are not talking about the practice and the traditions of the north. We're talking about the practice and the tradition of the south. So what would happen here is this. This lot in the north, our forefathers, would eventually be taken captive. They would go into Assyria. After Assyria, they would go to Babylon as well. Beyond Babylon, they would end up in Yemen, which is where my ancestry comes from. They would go into Yemen, they would go into the Far East. Those of the Persian kingdom would end up in India, including Jews from the south. But let's not talk about Jews just yet. And Pakistan, in the mountains of Pakistan are biblical Israelites. For example, the Afridi clan. All those Pakistanis with the surname Afridi up in the mountains. And funny enough, all the Afridis I know are left-handed. Sounds very much like Benjamin, but I'm not speculating here. Everybody who's played for Pakistan, who's an Afridi in the game of cricket, has presented themselves as a left-hander. So we know in the northern mountains of Pakistan is Zera Israel, and also in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, the remnant of the northern kingdom. Before everybody goes into captivity, we have elements of the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom going to Spain, Sfarad, as traders and settlers. So they go to Spain even before the exile. Some of them would go to Ethiopia even before the exile, and to other parts of Africa. And then, of course, we have during Solomon's reign, a marriage between Solomon and the queen of Cush, known as Sheba or Seba, the queen of Cush. Queen of Cush translates to the queen of Africa. And then they have a child together, Menelik, and that forms or unifies these two previously Jewish areas that were separated. What do I mean previously Jewish? When the Jews coming from this area, you must remember that Moses was king of Africa for 40 years. When Moses was king over Africa, his subjects became Jewish, because Jewish law says if the king is Jewish, then his subjects are Jewish. But this was not made really official, really official, until King Solomon has an affair with the Queen of Sheba. They have a child together, and the rest is history. But even before this happens, or even not before, after this happens, when the breakup really happens between the north and the southern kingdom, other Jews find themselves in Ethiopia. And after the exile, even more Jews find themselves in Ethiopia. When we talk about Ethiopia, we're not just talking about this place that people refer to as the Horn of Africa. We're not talking about this only. Ethiopia is everything you see from the upper Nile River, which is Sudan, all the way down to the river of Kush, going into the ocean. All of this is Kush. So what white people call sub-Saharan Africa, this is Kush. And all of this is Kush. In other words, it's Ethiopia. If you look at old world maps before colonization, the Atlantic Ocean was known as the Sea of Ethiopia. because Africa, the whole of Africa, was called Ethiopia. So which is the river Sambiaton? Is this one that goes through the Congo and goes into the Atlantic Ocean in Angola? This is Kush, not just this part. But the seat of Seba or Sheba is this one, the geographical Ethiopia. And that's where the remnant of the Ethiopian Jews were before they were whisked off in Operation Solomon by the Ashkenazi Jews or the Israeli Jews to safety. So coming back to our map here, our forefathers were whisked off into captivity, found themselves among every people and every tribe in the world. And then Judah was left all alone. But Judah was not free from sin. So he too was eventually exiled. Judah was exiled into the Persian kingdom, according to Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2 is not only a succession of world powers, but it tells about the different exiles of the Jewish people. Every different metal in Daniel chapter 2 represents a different kingdom and a different part of the world that the Jewish people from Judah would find themselves in. So from here in the south, Jewish people are taken through this journey. Greece, the Balkans, Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, Latvia, and especially Russia. So there are Jewish people from all of these places because the Jews were taken to all the places that were considered the the Roman Empire. So the Romans, around 77 CE, when Titus had now destroyed the temple in Jerusalem, he takes the Jews on the highway to all parts of the world. So the Jews eventually go everywhere in the world. France. I want to highlight the Jews of Spain, that they came here first, even before the exile, and the ones that came to Ethiopia. But later, the 10 Israelite tribes from Babylon, from Iraq, they would be taken by the Spirit of Hashem to their brothers in sub-Saharan Africa, south of the Sambiaton River. So purple is going to be Israel, the 10 tribes, and orange is going to be Judah. This is not an accurate historical tracing. This is me giving you an idea of what is happening. If you want an accurate representation, Rabbi Beryl Vine, before he died, he had done a comprehensive history lesson. You can go to YouTube and look for Beryl Vine, or you can search for Jewish historian, and you'll find not just Rabbi Vine's work, but other Jewish historians that depict this in a more accurate way than I have. I'm more interested in what I'm explaining, identity more than history. So you have the Jews of Spain and you have the Jews of Portugal here. And then there's an Inquisition in the 1500s in Spain and Portugal. Jews are being kicked out, persecuted. Some go to Morocco, so they come this way. The Jews travel this way. And then they would settle in Egypt, everywhere else along the way, including Egypt. And this is where Rambam, Maimonides, would work as a doctor and a theologian. Other Jews would stay in Iraq traditionally because of the Babylonian captivity. Other Jews would remain in Persia which is now known as Iraq. Other Jews would remain in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, Uzbekistan, and all the other funny countries. Sorry, when I say funny, I don't mean to be rude. All the other stunnies, right? And so today we have Jews that escaped the Inquisition and went to the Americas by ship. We have Jews that went to the Americas because of Hitler and because of Russia and Stalin. So they went to New York. There are about 9 million Jews in the USA today, 9 million. In the land of Israel, there's about 7 or 8 million. In total, there's about 14.5 million Jews around the world. 1.4 million Jews around the world that are registered, that have paperwork. What I mean by paperwork is you can prove your genealogy through paperwork. Jews in Africa or India or any other part of the world, they may not be able to do that, especially African Jews. Maybe people in the East might be able to prove it by having paperwork or some documentation or documented history, but in Africa became pretty much homogeneous with 6 tribes of Israel. In Africa, 6 tribes of Israel came here. When God took them from Iraq or Babylon and brought them to their brothers, it was 6 tribes of Israelites, not Jews, Israelites. And the Jews went to Europe and they went to the Americas in orange. This symbolizes their great sail by ship towards the Americas. And then, of course, in recent times, Hitler decided to annihilate the Jews, and they sadly lost 6 million, and most of them, the survivors, they went to America. So America is 9 million because half the Jews in Europe went over there, the other half that was left, and the other half was scattered all over the world, including Italy. There were Jews in Italy. All over the world, there's a Jew. But this is a general understanding that I want you to have, that from Judea, the Jews were taken to Europe or to the Roman world because they were now Roman slaves as far as Russia. Finland today, Sweden, Norway, there is no place, especially the United Kingdom and Ireland. There is no place in the world where there's no Jew, even one, or there's no Jewish history of even 100 people. There's a Jewish history. When I say Jewish, I'm talking about Judah. I'm not talking about the 10 tribes of Israel. So as I'm referring to Judah, I'm talking about people that were Benjamin plus Judah mixed with the remnant of the 10 tribes. So even among today's Jews, they have the seed of the north. They have the seed of the 10 tribes too among themselves. That's why Jews today in Europe and America, they will say, we don't know which tribes we are from. This is very interesting because in Africa, we know which tribes we are from. But over there, they don't know. In Africa, we don't have documentation that proves our Jewish migration through the Roman kingdom. But they have papers, but they don't know their tribes and their colors. In Africa, we have maintained our tribes and our colors. We know our colors. For example, the people who are Kohanim in Africa, this is their pattern. Their clothing pattern is red. It's a white cloth, which is derived from the talis. For example, it's a white cloth with the red patterns like this. And you'll find this in the cloth work of the Lembas, the Mpondos, the Tsonga, and other tribes of Southern Africa. The Xhosas also have this pattern, but it was not theirs. They inherited it from our Israelite forefathers who settled among them. The Xhosas have black on white. They don't have the red patterns. They have the black patterns like this in their traditional clothing. And then particular groups, like my mother's group, who have a heritage in Yemen, who come from this place here, Teman, Yemen, in a place called Sana'a. They came into Africa this way to run away from Muslim conquests. When they came into Africa, I must actually put this in a different color. My ancestors on my mother's side of the family have a blue pattern to their traditional clothing. So here I made some patterns and illustrations. Where did I make them? I made them here. And so my mother's group or clan has this pattern in blue on white, which can be seen very clearly on the talis or the talit of the Ethiopian Jew. And so in Africa, we can even go as far as the Tsonga people. The Tsonga have this pattern in their traditional clothing. They have the Magen David and then a pattern on top of it like this, and then little other triangles and whatever. All of these things are not a coincidence. It's because 6 tribes came to Africa. From the 10 tribes, Gad, Asher, Levi, Ephraim, Naphtali, and Dan in Africa. But these other ones, like the Leviim, they were whisked away from Babylon by God to join their brothers on the Sambiaton River in Africa. So all these ones came first. Then these later were added from Babylon, the Kohanim. So, and then you have people from Judah. I don't know how, but you have people from Judea, going all the way to Nigeria, to these areas, the north side of the land of Kush. Through the Portuguese, the west side of Africa in later years, in the medieval times, and during the colonization of the world, these Jews would also go to places like Sahara, Guinea, Cape Verde, Cabo Verde, and all these islands here. Jews would escape the prosecution by the Europeans. And then the last of the Portuguese Jews would end up in southern Africa in the 1600s. When the Dutch settled the Cape, they came with Jews. And when they came to southern Africa, the ship's manifestos say that when they landed in the Cape, they found people, a Moorish people that was Jewish. My mother's family among the Xhosas, they are called Amakoloni. Amakoloni in English just means colonists or the colonials. It means they came through the sea. They came through the establishment of the colony. They were not natives to the land. Who used to bring people to the Cape? The British, of course, but mostly the Sephardic Jews. Very interesting that my mother's family should be called Amakoloni, implying that they are not indigenous to the land. But when we go and interrogate our oral tradition, it suggests that we also came overland and reached southern Africa in the 1400s, in the late 1400s, to settle. So I'm talking about the tribe of Israel now. There's a big question mark on the Yemenite. Sorry, actually, this is not ours. This is the Kohanim and the tribes. I meant to say my mother's tribe from Yemen, from here, going down. Beg your pardon. This direction here. So from Yemen, what we know about Yemen is it was the biggest Jewish kingdom outside of the land of Israel. It was Jewish because here both was Judah and Israel making one kingdom. There were Jews and Israelites making one kingdom, and they went south. So when the Lembas in Zimbabwe tell about their story, it's not far-fetched. It was never far-fetched. It's simple oral history. In Europe, they have documentation and birth certificates and all the other stuff and genealogies. Down here in Africa, we have an oral tradition. An oral tradition is an Israelite tradition as well. The Jews also have an oral tradition, but they have books. We have oral tradition. So what am I trying to say with all this blah, blah, blah? What I'm trying to say to you is when you go on the internet or you see on television, whatever, people talking about Jews, you're not going to see a black person. You're not going to see an Indian. You're not going to see a Pakistani. You're not even going to see a Yemenite Jew. It's so hard to see a Yemenite Jew, but you'll see Ashkenazi Jews all the time. Sometimes you'll see Sephardic Jews. I'm just trying to explain to you this whole thing about identity. And the reason why you never see Black Jews or Eastern Jews, I don't think it comes down to racism or being Ashkenazim being the preferred race. No. They've got the money. They've got the power. They've had the privilege, the white privilege, of existing and doing business in the Western world. Sephardic Jews also have had white privilege because they served the kingdoms of France. Sephardic Jews served the kingdoms of France, Spain, and Portugal. So when the world went to the West to explore and to conquer different countries, usually the companies, the shipping companies belonged to the Jews. For example, the Dutch East India Company belonged to the Jews. So the Western Jews definitely have more money and more power and more influence in the world. But it doesn't mean that these 14 million Jews are the only Jewish people on the planet. There are hundreds of millions more, but they don't know that they're Jewish. They don't know that they're Israelites. God promises in the Bible that he will bring us all back to our native land, which is this lovely little place here called Israel. So the Jews came back first. The Ashkenazis and the Sephardic, they came back first, and from other eastern areas. And then of course there were Jews that never left the native land, even during the Roman Exodus, or exile, I want to say. So it's interesting today that the government of Israel is trying to take over and recover Judah and Samaria, this area called the West Bank. So if you look at today's political map of Israel, you're going to find an ugly wall, but a necessary wall that protects, cuts Jerusalem into two, and protects an area called the West Bank, which is basically Judea and Samaria. Samaria is the northern kingdom. It's the seat of the northern kingdom, and Judea in the south. So if the IDF or the Israeli government claims this land back from the Palestinians, my question is, are they going to allow the Israelites to come back? Are they going to allow the Israelites to go and settle Samaria, Shechem, the West Bank, Mount Gerizim, where the Samaritans are? I don't know. It's all politics. But here's one thing I do know. In terms of identity, if you come from Africa, and especially Southern Africa, you are definitely an Israelite. Not just anyone, but somebody who knows and has a Jewish soul, as they say, in inverted commas, Jewish soul, and you're coming back to the Torah, you're definitely an Israelite. West African Jews tend to be Jews, actually. All the Igbo, all the people in Guinea, and all these other countries in Madagascar, in the island of Madagascar, those are Jews from Judea. They were traders. So the rest of us who are south of the river of Cush, this is our identity. We are Israelites. But I'll tell you what we are not. I will explain to you what we are not. What we are not is a bunch of imbeciles, idiots in North America that call themselves Black Hebrew Israelites, and they hate Jews and they hate Judaism. I'm going to show you here. These people have taken our identity and they've made a mockery out of it, a complete mockery, by creating a Black pseudo-Israelite hate group that's equal to the KKK, but they use the Magen David, the Star of David. This is a mockery to our identity. So what happened is that now the Jews don't want to recognize the real Black Hebrew Israelites, for example, of Harlem, or anyone who calls himself an Israelite receives or is cast in a bad light as an enemy of the Jewish people for two reasons: biblical history between the North and the Southern Kingdom, but also stupidity like this, that Black people, some Black people, have been busy doing and getting up to in America. So these guys, they say they're the real Jews because they're Black and no other reason because they're Black. And they go around spreading hate and chasing Jews around and saying hateful things to the Jews, the European Jews, the Ashkenazi Jews. If you want to know why the Jews of Europe are white, Europe is white, but there's an even more disturbing story of white Jews. Women in Europe were subjected to systemic, Jewish women were subjected to systemic rape so that they may look like the people that they're around. That's why you have Jews that are white as snow. Sometimes those European Jews don't even have a drop of Abraham's blood, not a drop of Abraham's blood, because they are converts to Judaism. They were never children of Abraham. In other cases, you can see that there is a clear mixture between Semitic blood and European blood. But I'm not here to be racist. I'm here to say that this Black Hebrew group movement that have stolen a holy name to spread hatred against Jews and other people groups, these are not the real Israelites. And I want to tell you that these idiots, these Power Rangers, I call them Power Rangers because they go on dressed like Power Rangers. Bunch of idiots, really. they cast the black Hebrew Israelites of Israel in Dimona in a bad light, because those are real Israelites actually. The black Hebrew Israelites of Dimona, they are descendants of Karaite Jews. Karaite Jews are descendants of the priests. They never accepted the Talmud and the oral tradition. They only went by the Tanakh, just like the Karaites. And they were in Africa, and they were taken to where? To the West by slave traders. And most of the time, that's probably the reason why the Muslim black class sold the other black classes as slaves to the Europeans. One, they're Jewish. Two, others were natives that were not literate. And so when the group in Dimona and their leaders say, well, we know we are Jewish, just listen to their tradition. And he points back to being Karaite. Karaite, not accepting the oral tradition, but it doesn't mean they are not the children of Israel. And so they rightfully hold on to the title and the identity of Black Hebrew Israelites. But it doesn't mean that all of us fit into that mold and into that category of the Black Hebrew Israelites of Dimona. Some of us know exactly where we come from. For example, the traditions in my mother's family, yes, we're Israelites, but their traditions are more Jewish. Israelites don't light Shabbat candles. Israelites don't light the Shabbat candles. You know why? Because that's a rabbinic tradition. Only the Jews light candles. But my mother used to light candles on Shabbat, not knowing why, but she did, which was the beginning of our teshuvah and our awakening, unbeknown to us 33 years ago. So among us Israelites, we can be sure of our Israelite identity and have no doubts that we are Israelites, even though we have some Jewish tradition or traditions. And then there's another tradition that you will find in Africa. Sorry, another identity that you will find in Africa. Zera Israel, which means the seed of Israel. What does it mean? Everyone else was not born from a Jewish mother, but had Jewish fathers or Israelite fathers, especially the Kohanim. Give you an example of this. The kingdom of Swaziland, the Swazi people, their king was converted to Judaism by the Israelites that are now in Zimbabwe. So that means all the women from Swaziland that get married to Zulu kings and give children to Zulu children, that tells us that among the Zulus are Jews and Israelites. It'd be interesting to study their DNA. So we are Israelites, and then there's a seed of Israel, and then there are Hebrews. Who are the Hebrews in Africa? Semitic Africans, going back to Eber, a Semitic people that spoke Hebrew. I don't know much about the Hebrew identity in Africa, but I know these two very, very well. I know these two very, very well. So when we come back to the Beit Din and we are saying to the Jews of Europe that are scattered all over the world, including my country in South Africa, when we go to the Beit Din soon and we ask for conversion, we are not asking to be made Ashkenazi. We're not asking to be made Sephardic. We already know who we are. When we come back to Judaism, it's because we must do teshuvah as the children of Israel. We must do teshuvah We must come back to the Torah of Moses, the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the only way to do this is to literally go back to the Torah and live what the Torah says. But there's too many identity politics because we must go back to Israel. The prophet said we must go back to Israel. So now we find ourselves in the middle of identity politics and having to convert at the Beit Din. When we convert, then we become halachic Jews. But we must not forget that we are Israelites, and we must not forget our colors. We must not forget our traditions. All the way from the river Sambiaton, the Congo River, south of the Congo River, all the way back to the land of Israel. We will satisfy nominal Judaism and its politics and convert so we can become halachic Jews and cooperate and become part of the greater community of the Jewish people. But our identity is not Jewish. We're not trying to take or steal the Jewish identity, because the Jewish identity is really associated with Europe and whiteness. And that's good for them. I'm not a racist, but I understand that some people might feel like you're stealing their traditions and their identity. I understand this very, very well. So this is the way that we're gonna preserve our tradition, by going back to the Mishnayot, the Mishnah. We're gonna go back to the Jerusalem Talmud, and that's where we're gonna find our ancient traditions. So yeah, don't lose your Israelite tradition. Become more proud of this tradition now than ever before. Even if you've got those idiots in America that are trying to drag our identity through the mud, you must be proudly Israelite, proudly Torah observant. Do your nominal Judaism conversion, but maintain high your Israelite tradition, because in Israel, there's no single house. In Israel, there's the northern kingdom and there's the southern kingdom. We are proudly descendants of the 10 tribes, and we were not called Jews, we were called Israel. I hope this helps you in a little way. I didn't want to waste your time, but I just felt like I needed to explain this to you, and whoever else that will come to see this video and decide that they want to come back to Judaism with their Israelite identity. I'm having an amazing time in Argentina, where I'm meeting people that are crying out and saying, I know I'm not Jewish. And these are not African people. These are descendants of Sephardic Jews and North Africans and people from Portugal, Spain, Greece, Malta, funny places in the world. And they found themselves far-flung as Brazil and Argentina. And they're saying, I'm Jewish, I know I'm the daughter of Israel, and I'm coming back. Just last week we were studying as usual in Spanish and publishing our videos in Spanish, because we have people, Israelites, that know that they are not Jewish. So they never bothered going to the synagogue, but they knew that they were Israel and they wanted to come back home. In Colombia, country north of us, Colombia, and now a girl in Argentina said, I know I'm Israel and I want to do teshuvah, I want to come back home. And that's why I say it's important to uphold this identity of Israel. Where does Israel come from? Why is it so important to uphold Israel as an identity? The Ben Ish Chai teaches that what God wanted us to become as the children of Jacob is to be men and women of Israel. What does it mean to be Ish, man? Israel. Israel means a man of God. It can also be a woman of God because Isha is inside of Ish. So Israel, to be a person, man or woman of God, what does it mean to be Israel, Ish, man of God? It means that the highest level, the highest spiritual level that can be attained is not to be a Jew, but it is to be Israel, to be Israel. That's the highest standard that God expects us to reach through the study of Torah, the practice of Torah, the obedience to Torah, and the mitzvot. When a child is born and they have Jewish or Israelite heritage, the expectation from God is that they grow up to be like Jacob. They become Israel. They grow up to be like Isaac. They grow up to be like Abraham. They become a man of the pact, a man of the covenant, Israel. So the name Israel, they can try and drag it through the mud in America. Other Jews might hate or frown upon anyone who comes back to Judaism calling themselves Israel. Some might scoff and laugh at us, but you need to be strong and you need to preserve this precious identity of Israel. This is our daily aspiration. We aspire to become Israel through the Torah and through the teachings of the Shekhinah, because the Shekhinah, she teaches us the Torah in exile, when our Jewish brothers and sisters may not be able and willing to open the Torah to us or their synagogues to us. More and more I see from different people groups, from different demographics in the world, people are saying Israel. People are not saying Jewish. I'm Jewish, I'm Jewish, I'm Jewish. People are saying I'm Israel, Israel, Israel. And this is because of what the prophets have said. This is the time to uphold the colors of the house of Israel. I saved on my computer the colors of my tribe. But funny enough, this tribe of Dan is not on my maternal side of the family, it's on the paternal side of the family. So the paternal side of the family, when I trace their heritage, it leads me back to Ethiopia. And in Ethiopia, what do we know about Ethiopia? Tribe of Dan. And when the Ethiopian Jews were clamoring for rescue and wanted to go back to Israel, they said, yeah, we are the Danites, we are Jews, we are Danites. So the tribe of Dan has endured, not only in Ethiopia, but also in the south. And I remember growing up, the name Dan, hearing the name Dan in rural South Africa being given to certain people of certain tribes. The name Dan has always been there. Not only in the Bible, but I've always heard it. But anyways, I don't want to bore you to death or try to prove things that other people might say are not, that we cannot prove. I'm not here to prove anything. I'm not making this video to prove anything, but I'm making this video with a lot of conviction and dedicated to my identity. And my identity and everybody else's identity that I'm meeting is Israel. And in Israel, there are 12 tribes. This is my tribe. Dan was chosen to be the judge of Israel, but also the protector of Israel. The Danites are a warrior people that have fought the wars of the Jews, even during the times of the great kings, David and Solomon. So here we are. European Jews have all the papers and they can prove their Jewishness, and the rest of us might look like imposters. But we know the names of the tribes and we know which tribe we belong to. The Lembas told it The first time, we are Kohanim. We are saying, I'm saying I'm a Danite. But there's a possibility as well that there is a Jewish connection because of our oral tradition to Yemen. But it's not the Jewish title and identity that I want, that I'm going after. I'm after the Torah. I'm after the tradition of my forefathers, the teachings of Moshe Rabbeinu, reestablishing the past in my present, living the past in my present, in my lifetime, before I depart from this world as a Bnei Israel. Proud to be Bnei Israel. Don't fight the Jews for their identity. You have your own identity. But here's the thing, when we come back to nominal Judaism, they're going to say we are non-Jews, and that's okay too. If they throw a conversion program at your face, take it. If you already know the Torah and the traditions, you've lived them all your life, treat it as a tevilah of teshuvah, whatever it is, a return. Don't take it personal. But what you must do is maintain the colors of Israel. That's a white flag. And on the white flag is written, Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. When our forefathers fought the local tribes in Africa for land and for rule, when they went to war, that's the flag or banner that they flew, a white flag, which had the Shema written on it. We know our tradition. Stick to it. Hashem bless you and keep you. Shavua Tov. And I will see you back in class when we study the Torah.